Welcome back. This week I have been doing some experiments with the speech processor in my HF radio, FT710, which is sitting there. I set up my HF receiver in a different room, pointed a camera at it, and transmitted the same phrase using different compression levels, going from 0 to 100% in blocks of 10%. So there were 10 different recordings. I then did an 11th recording, which was me close talking across the microphone. This is something that old timers used to do. I've just grabbed a microphone to show you what I mean. So what people would do is they would take the microphone, and you could speak really closely into it, but it would distort everything. So what they would do is they would speak across the microphone like this, very clearly, and it wouldn't distort because you weren't speaking straight into the element. Now, I used to think that that worked because people were using high impedance microphones. A lot of them were crystal microphones. Even in my first SSB transceiver used a crystal element, and it was a very high impedance. I thought it was something to do with the mechanics of that. It was effectively overloading the element and it couldn't recover between peaks. But it doesn't seem to be, because I've now tried it on an electret condenser microphone and we'll see the results of that. The first thing I'll do is play the audio, which could be quite boring and you might want to skip over it. The difficulty with this recording is it was done on a mobile phone, and that includes its own compression and automatic level controls and things, and then uploading it to YouTube does similarly. So once we've heard the audio recordings, I will show you the waveforms that I've captured from those recordings, which actually is much more revealing, which shows the levels of compression that the radio applies to the audio, and also the effects of the limiter, because radios have limiters in them as well. So to explain what audio compression does, it amplifies the lower volume parts of the signal and brings them up closer to the peaks. If you were to apply very large amounts of compression, you would end up with a signal that was very loud. To prevent overdriving, a compressor is always used with a limiter, which stops the peaks going too high and distorting. So if you turn up the compression very high and the limiter kicks in, you end up with basically a rectangular audio waveform, which is sometimes known as brick wall. You will come across this a lot on YouTube because the YouTube algorithm likes loud audio with very little dynamic range. They promote videos that are recorded that way much more heavily, and a lot of audio editing software, including DaVinci Resolve, has a default YouTube setting that has quite a high compression built into it, which is not good for music recording or other things. First of all, we'll listen to the recordings. Then I will show you the audio waveforms of those recordings and the effect that compression has on the signal.
Golf Mike 4 Sierra Victor Mike. This is the processor set to 0. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. Golf Mike 4 Sierra Victor Mike. This is the processor set to 10%. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. Golf Mike 4 Sierra Victor Mike. This is the processor set to 20%. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. Golf Mike 4 Sierra Victor Mike. This is the processor set to 30%. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. Golf Mike 4 Sierra Victor Mike. This is the processor set to 40%. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. Golf Mike 4 Sierra Victor Mike. This is the processor set to 50%. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. Golf Mike 4 Sierra Victor Mike. This is the processor set to 60%. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. Golf Mike 4 Sierra Victor Mike. This is the processor set to 70%. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. Golf Mike 4 Sierra Sierra Victor Mike. This is the processor set to 80%. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. Golf Mike 4 Sierra Victor Mike. This is the processor set to 90%. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. Golf Mike 4 Sierra Victor Mike. This is the processor set to 100%. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. Now I'm close talking the microphone but speaking into the edge of the microphone. So speaking across the microphone, this is Golf Mike 4 Sierra Victor Mike GM4 SVM testing.
Okay, well that's what the different levels of compression sound like in an audio recording. Obviously, recording them digitally and then putting them on YouTube means there's a lot of things going on there which makes them sound not that different from each other. In reality, they are. So I'm going to show it to you graphically. If we start with zero compression, you can see the peaks here. I hope you can see my cursor. And you can see the troughs of me speaking, and this was me speaking the phrase, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, so you can see the individual syllables there. We've got peaks and we've got troughs. The troughs go quite deep, and if I try and draw a rectangle on here, you'll see that that's basically where the audio is sitting, about there. So if I go to 40% compression, and this is to the same scale, and I tried to speak at the same volume, you can see that what's happened here is that the lows have been brought up higher and the peaks have not been clipped down at all. So there is effectively more audio in that signal than when it had no compression. But the limiter hasn't kicked in, so you're still getting these peaks here. If we look at 100% compression, you can see the peaks have really gone down here. The image actually looks smaller. So in this case, it's a much broader area of audio. What's happened here is that the troughs in the audio have been brought up a lot more, and the limiter is kicking in to clip down the tops. Now, if we look at close talking the microphone, that's speaking across the microphone, this actually has a remarkably similar effect to 40% compression. So the old timers were right. In fact, I would say there's more compression there on close talking without it getting distorted. So the peaks are actually, the limiter's not really kicking in here because you can see that these peaks aren't getting high enough to hit the limiter, apart from maybe that one, or that one there is hitting the limiter. So in fact, talking across the microphone in a fairly clear way is giving as much compression as a 40% speech processor. Let's have a look at the sort of average volume height compared to 40%. I would say it's possibly even more compression doing it that way without a speech processor at all. One of the issues with compression is that if you use a lot of it and you don't use a limiter, your signal will get wider and wider. And we've all heard that on the bands. Maybe not so much in recent years because most radios have limiters in them, but the signal gets wider and wider and you end up splat all over the place, particularly with single sideband. So there is a fine balance between using too much compression and intelligibility and making the most of your signal. What this has shown though is that the old timers were right, that close talking across a microphone actually has a similar effect. I thought it was to do with crystal microphones that were in use at that time, because most microphones on older radios were high impedance microphones, but my radio uses an electric condenser and it seemed to have a similar effect. So it's not a mechanical thing to do with the actual microphone element. It just seems to be that there's enough retention of the signal between peaks that it doesn't have time to recover between peaks, and it holds the volume up. But as always, I would say that I'm not an expert at these things. I'm just a hobbyist. I'm sure there's lots of people out there who know more about it than me. But we've been able to see from those waveforms that compression does make a difference. But if you don't have a compressor, there's something you can do about it. So I hope you found that interesting, and thanks for watching.